It's like a family reunion. You brought the whole family here.
I know. Good afternoon and hello again, everyone. Et bonjour, Monsieur le Ministre.
Bonjour, bonjour.
C'est un immense honneur pour moi d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. I'm so delighted to be moderating this conversation with Minister François-Philippe Champagne, who is the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry for Canada in the Trudeau government. And I'm particularly proud because I learned much of what I know about critical minerals and batteries from my time working for the Quebec government.
It's true.
I spent a long time advocating for integrated North American supply chain and highlighting the developments in Bécancour, which I appreciate is right near your riding in Trois-Rivières. And since I've left Quebec to come to SAFE, you guys have been hard at work. You've matched the IRA with your near $4 billion. We'll go Canadian and American dollars very ambiguously here because I haven't checked the exchange rate this morning. But a nearly $4 billion budget for critical minerals strategy and $1.5 billion for the accompanying critical minerals infrastructure fund. And lots to show of it. You've got great investments from Umicore for battery manufacturing, Stellantis EV cell manufacturing, GM POSCO, CAM PCAM, rumored battery components maybe in Manitoba, LG Chem Panasonic for graphite extraction. The list goes on.
You're well informed. You should be working for the government, you know.
I'm sure Robbie will give me some feedback about this pitch in Canada here. But you know, I think that no better example of the integration of North America has been seen than you just connecting with so many people on the ground here. Every person I've talked to at the conference has already met Minister Champagne today. And even when I was at PDAC last week, people were advocating that he come here. And beyond that, you know, you've got European experience too. So all the Europeans know you. You're truly solving the global power puzzle for us, Minister. Do you want to speak to some of that?
That's quite an introduction. Anyone who wants to take the microphone. Listen, it's a real pleasure. You know, you always know if you fit in a place when you look at the speaker before you and after you. So not only I know the ambassador of the European Union to the United States, but Scott, who was just before, is the one who actually I met first at Volkswagen, which then lended to the fact that Canada landed the largest gigafactory of Volkswagen in North America. So it's a real small world. And Dominic Raab is after, which served as foreign secretary at the same time than me. So I think I'm in good company. You really assembled, and I was with Governor McMaster, talking about the connection between South Carolina and really connecting the dots. I think my job is really connecting the dots, making sure that people understand that between the site of production and the integrated nature of the supply chain that we're bringing in North America, that we make sure that we are resilient. You know, I was saying that. I was with Governor Georgia yesterday, which was exactly the same message. They said, it's good that you have a Hyundai and escape plan, but by the way, the critical minerals come from north, and the processing and looking at all the elements you need, obviously, to make that, from the electrolytes, the separators, the magnet for motors. And it's the same with South Carolina, actually, which we were talking about BMW, which I said, Governor, not only I know that, we're the one who brokered the deal that the aluminum for the cars of BMW in South Carolina is made actually in Saguenay, Quebec, which is the Elysis with Rio Tinto. So it is a small world, but I think people in this room understand it better than others that, for me, supply chain resiliency is economic security, which is national security. So we really need to be eyes wide open. I think that we have been successful in North America because that's the most integrated industry that you find, I would say, probably in the world between two countries. And just for you were kind enough to say that because we've been winning together. But in fact, Bloomberg, some of you may have seen, ranked Canada first, ahead of China, for the battery ecosystem for the next 30 years. So I think, you know, we can say kudos to everyone in the room here because that's really, when I see Canada, US, that's really something that we shape over the last few years. And with the IRA and investments we've done on both sides, I think we're changing the game and we're making sure that the future of mobility is going to be anchored in North America, and that we will be not repeating the mistake of the past, but we would have a very resilient supply chain. But we need to do more, and that's why I'm here with all of you, and this is like a family reunion because when I look around the room, those are a lot of people that I know that we've been working. And I would say we need to seize the moment and be ambitious because the window is closing, and we need to address the issue of our dependency and vulnerability in the supply chain. That's why I'm so impressed with the SAFE Summit. Actually, I fall in love with it because I learned of it last week, and here I am this week. So
yeah, there we go.
This is a pretty good thing.
Well, we're pleased to get on your calendar. You've been very busy. So you mentioned the Bloomberg ranking, which congratulations. I think that's great. Actually, when I found out that Canada had displaced China as this #1 jurisdiction, I was at Mining Indaba in Cape Town, and at a Bloomberg session, they asked us, how can Africa, how can countries around the table at this session learn from what Canada did? And so, it's not only within the North American context, but countries all over the world are trying to have their part of the value add as we start to move from a fossil-based economy to a mineral-based one, right? So how does Canada balance that, right? You have your own domestic desires to electrify and digitize your economy that demand minerals, but you're helping support mineral feedstock all over the world. How are you kind of balancing domestic needs with international partnerships?
Well, we've signed partnership. I mean, the United States, I think, was the first one because obviously the integrated nature of the auto sector in North America calls for it. But then we had our allies. The German chancellor came. We did that. We did that with the United Kingdom. Even the Japanese, I remember when Nishimura-san, before he changed office, that's a nice anecdote. I'll put that in the book one day, but I'll give you a free chapter. He came and they said, Minister, you have Nishimura-san, for those who know, was the Minister of Meat in Japan. And they said, he's coming in 2 days to sign an MOU. And I said, wow, that seems to be a long way to sign an MOU. There must be more to that, We could certainly be doing that otherwise. And they said, no, he's coming with a big delegation, CEOs and TV and all that. And the reality was, because that was the only critical mineral MOU that Japan has signed with any country in the world. And so just to tell you that, yes, with friends, partners, and allies, we've been looking at that. And I think that, to be honest, I think there's more than enough for all of us. But what we need now is to match the demand with the exploration and obviously the refining. Mm-hmm. And I would say when I've been talking, I was with Goldman Sachs this morning, a couple of governors and others, we need to match the demand and the supply. In a sense, the demand is largely driven by the investment that people in the room have been making on both sides of the border. And we need to make sure that whether it's graphite, whether it's lithium, whether it's nickel, whether it's copper, whether it's cobalt, we have nascent industries in North America. What we need now is speed and scale, because we are far more too dependent on Asia. And that, for me, is a function of matching, building the bridges between these startups. I see E3 Lithium, I think, is in the room from Alberta. I can think of Nemaska Lithium, Nouveau Monde Graphite. I mean, there's a number of up-and-coming companies which are prepared. But I think for me, what we're doing now, in my view, we're doing sequentially. I'd like to do concurrently. Like, people are looking phase 1, phase 2, and 3. And because it's largely driven by the demand that we're seeing, which is, there's peaks, and it's normal. I think this is a generational opportunity. You don't change technology in that magnitude. You see that maybe once in a lifetime. And for me, I see a world of opportunity. But we certainly, if we were to do a service to the industry, in my view, because now, if you want to have more adoption, you need to reduce cost. The cost of battery, which are going to drive the price of the car down, which is going to help to increase the demand. And that's our biggest challenge because, I think folks in the room would probably agree. Manufacturing battery was not a technology we mastered in North America, nor in Europe. That was mainly in Korea and China and Japan. So the fact that now we have the technology, we need to train the people, we need to get these plants up and running, and we need capacity. And then we have to think also in a circular way because there's not going to be enough mineral to mine to fuel the economy, the EV economy of the future. So we need to think about recycling. But it's also a great opportunity because we shape a new industry that's going to be with us at least for the next few decades, if not beyond. So this is a moment in time where SAFE and the speaker before, like the European Union, which we did, and whether my good friend Dominic Raab, I'm sure, is going to speak about that as well. It's a moment in time where we need to really seize it and rapidly because we need to reduce the vulnerability in the supply chain. And millions of people rely on both sides of the border about what this group is going to do. Talk about governors. I was doing the supply chain mapping and say, we are far more dependent. This is not a nice relationship we have. It's a strategic relationship. We are interdependent. This is the indispensable relationship between our two countries. So I think that's what we're doing. And certainly SAFE Summit is an amazing place to bring the awareness, whether it's in Congress, Senate, our friends in the governor's office around the country.
So you mentioned one thing that was really reminiscent of what an OEM said to me, a representative from an OEM said to me last night at dinner, is that this is a little bit of a moving target, right? Price volatility, geopolitical stress on the market, it's making it really hard for us. And you really pointed effectively to the fact that we need to be helping industry. And while we have discovered lithium-ion batteries on this side of the border. LFP was discovered in Canada. We haven't necessarily commercialized it, brought it to scale under or within our borders, right? So we need to be able to start developing that manufacturing here and engaging. And I'm just curious, are you, when working with these companies that have made investments in the Canadian side of the border, but they're providing feedstock, or there's further transformation happening on this side of the border, are you guys kind of gaming that out with your American partners? Is this integration of policy happening, like the integration of our supply chain?
Yes, but we can always do better. Let's be honest. This is happening rapidly. I feel sometimes I'm the concierge service, because I've got the OEM calling me and say, Minister, can you plug me with this mine? Can you call Susan? Can you call Peter? Can you organize Listen, yes, I can, and I'm happy to leave you my cell phone number, but that might not be the most efficient way to organize an industry. We need to make sure that we look at that from a continental perspective. I'm a big believer in the Buy North America type of thing. Why? Because I think that, the future is going to depend on what we do. We need to future-proof the revenues that we're going to be generating if we want that to be sustainable. And therefore, for me, the supply chain are critical in that, and a mapping of the exploration, a mapping of the refining. I'll give you an example. There's no that I know of, but I stand to be challenged by anyone. Electrolytes. There's not electrolyte plants that I know of in North America. So I was with the big OEM recently, and I said something crazy. I said, what about if we were pooling? So do you need each to have your own electrolyte supplier? We could have a big one where we strategically locate in North America so we could serve like the D3 and those beyond. And, they look at me and say, Minister, that's interesting, actually, because, I'm not sure, electrolytes, that goes in the battery. It's not really something that competitive advantage that I know of. Other components, yes, but that. So those are the type of discussions we need to have. And I think that's where SAFE can say, listen, if we had to put one or two, perhaps three electrolytes plant in the country, where we should put that to serve the ecosystem, we need to really be more efficient. We need to be more strategic, I think. A lot of these investments, you're right, whether it's Nordvolt, whether we had Volkswagen, SK is here, GM, POSCO. I mean, all of this, we all talk to the same people, but we certainly, and also, I know there's a lot of folks on national security side. For me, this is a national security issue. It's not just nice. It's something that we need. It's like semiconductors. It's these type of things where we need to be deliberate in how we're going to build the supply chain of the future and reduce the vulnerability. And I would say, in my view, when I talk to OEMs and chair and boards and CEO, geopolitics is taking about 40% of the board time now.
Yeah.
Make the wrong bet. Could be very expensive, could even be very, disruptive to the business. So stability, predictability in the rule of law is in high demand and short supply. So you need to think about how you're going to attract that. And it starts with talent, certainly the ecosystem. And then on the critical mineral side, I say proximity. Proximity is everything. Proximity to the resources market and assembly line. And then I would add to that when you have renewable energy, because consumers, at least I see it, are looking not only electric, but they want to go green eventually. So green steel, green aluminum, green batteries, semiconductors. So all that, I think, is giving North America and the people in the room an amazing competitive advantage. The speed at which we're going to get there, different people may have different views on that, but I think we've passed the tipping point and the journey is clear. And you look at some mandates, look at Mercedes-Benz that by, I think, 2035 said they want to give you a certificate of zero carbon if you buy a car. At least that's what I remember with my discussion. So we're going in that direction. And I think for me, some may see that as a challenge. I see that as a great opportunity for millions of jobs on both sides and also providing prosperity for decades to come.
So, we did invite Syensco Solvay's battery spinoff that does have an electrolyte plant. I think in the United States they got a bipartisan infrastructure law grant. So shame on them for declining my invitation, because then we could have had a good conversation on co-oping that part of the supply chain together.
You stole my punch. I didn't want to say which company it was, but here you go.
There we go.
We're in this together.
Yeah, exactly. But going back to your future-proofing revenue and making sure there's business certainty to some of this, I was really struck listening to some interviews you had done in Canada on how you guys have been incentivizing investments north of the border, and a big question came up around how there's a conditionality of the IRA staying in place to make sure that you guys are maintaining kind of a competitive edge. Obviously, we're all competing together for this new supply chain that's being developed. I'm just curious, how does that maybe speak to the interconnection of the United States and Canada? Are you worried at all about the Inflation Reduction Act coming up to votes on this side of the border? How would that change the game for you guys and ISED and
that's a question I get often. What's my take on the IRA? For me, it's been a great catalyst for reindustrializing North America. Whether you talk friendshoring, nearshoring, however you want to describe that. I'm one who believe in that, although I come from the manufacturing sector. So before politics, I was in business 20 years in Europe. So I really believe manufacturing plus innovation equal prosperity. And I know some people may have different views, but if you look at the economy of Taiwan, South Korea, Germany, Japan, and there's other factors. But I believe having a great manufacturing base is great. And also, Samsung Secretary of Commerce, I go from space to AI. So I appreciate there's the digital technology. There's going to be a lot of innovation. But at the end of the day, we'll still need to make things. So for me, this was, I think the IRA was a catalyst to bring these investments in North America. And now we need to take that opportunity. I think the content mandate helped, the IRA helped. And for me, it's been great in a sense. We were clear when we talked to our friends around the world, this should not be a race to subsidies, but at least just having a level playing field. And then people will naturally come in different jurisdictions because the talent pool is there, the ecosystem allows them, the logistics, depending where they have the assembly. You tend to see that the refining PCAM, CAM stands closer to the resources than the cell and the pack would go closer to the plants. I mean, there's a number of things that are happening, but in terms of the net benefit to North America, for me, it's clear that this has allowed to really reindustrialize a lot of states. I mean, again, I was in Georgia, was before in Michigan. I stopped in Ohio just this week. And you see the impact of that. It's like an Intel plant in Ohio and Columbus, $30 billion. I mean, those are massive investments that are going to be multi-generational. So I see that as positive. And to me, there's no real competition. We're complementary. The competition is not here. The competition is elsewhere. If we are successful, if we integrate our supply chain, we make them more efficient, we're going to eventually reduce the cost of the battery and have an uptake in adoption.
Yep.
And so I think it's incumbent upon us and the people in the room that we work together in that. And certainly Canada stands to be a partner because we are the only Western country with all the critical minerals to do both the battery and the semiconductors. So I would say we're blessed by geography, all of us, because we have that next door. And with that, and if you take SMRs, for example, to make sure we can mine these resources in remote regions, in the north, you can even do that sustainably. And I think people are aligning their supply chain with their values, and I think that's great in terms of resiliency, which in my view is the name of the game. How can we be more resilient? Coming out of the pandemic, and you'll hear from my colleague Dominic Raab, I remember at the time we were both Secretary of State or the equivalent in his system and mine, but having G7 calls on regularly, almost every other day about, how do we, this was at the time where vaccines, PPE and all that, we said never again. So we need to be, as we're building a new industry, this is an opportunity for us to, look at what we need, what's the scale we need. I'll give you an example. There's only one cobalt plant in North America. So you can say, well, we can have one here. It took 15 years to permit. Happens to be in Cobalt, Ontario. Now you may say we need cobalt or not. That's a different discussion. But my point would be instead of trying to re-permit one, which may take at least 15 years, and I'm a lawyer, that could be even longer, depending on litigation. But the other place you could do is say, well, why don't we triple the capacity of what we have already? Mm-hmm. And that would be probably more efficient, so to get the product to market quicker. So I think there's a lot of opportunity of matching, the demand, the capital, and the resources so that we make ourselves more sustainable and more efficient.
Yeah, and I think we'll hear from Bryce from Jervois that's trying to get a cobalt mine in Idaho going, that has faced challenges with price volatility later today, but I'm sure he'll be primed to maybe think about it from that perspective as well. I want to ask you one last question before we get the hook over here. Given that you have this focus on innovation and we're trying very hard, as you say, to compete, to reach our hands across the desert, dance on the paradise together, is there ways that innovation, coordination, Canada, US, even with our allies across the Atlantic can potentially help us do things differently than China? Are there examples, you've seen north of the border, south of the border, companies you've met with that are showing that we can use different processes that are more efficient, create operational efficiencies, cost savings, and then also potentially lower emissions profiles and save on energy use?
I'd like to say all of the above. In a sense, yes, I think we should work with our friends in Japan and in South Korea, in Europe as well. They're trying AECS is having Nordvolt as operation. Listen, this is at least the battery manufacturing capability and the efficiency of these big manufacturers. This is complex. For me, it's also amazing. I used to be in a different industry, but this is the first time where you have two amazing industries, the auto sector and the mining sector, having to work together. Well, you could say they had to work together in the past because obviously you need that in the car, but now the battery, which is kind of at least one essential component of the EV vehicle, if not the essential component. You need to really work closely. This is two industries which used to dance, but to your example, dancing on the island, we're not probably dancing that close. They both existed and supplied, but now this is an opportunity, and I think the way we're going to be manufacturing the battery of the future, it's also going back to education. I was just at Georgia Tech yesterday, I think. Canada has a number of universities. We probably need to put our best brain and our money behind the innovation that we'll need. The refining of some of these critical minerals is complex and could be challenging. So how do we make that in the most sustainable way? How do we pull the capital to accelerate that? If we have been able to bring this talent or technology in North America, now it's probably incumbent upon us to say, okay, what is that technology 2.0? It's going to be incumbent upon us to make sure we do that. And I think customer ultimately will want that. I think you're looking at people who want obviously more sustainable processes. And I think again, for me, I'd say let's seize the moment. Let's be ambitious. This is a once in a lifetime generational opportunity. And what you're doing and the people in the room, we're shaping, I think, prosperity in this part of the world for the next generations.
Well, thank you. We'll leave it on that high note. Thank you so much for joining us. Merci beaucoup d'être ici. Thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone.